Okay guys, today MotorCarNut here, and we're going to be replacing the front brake pads and the rotor on 2003 to 2014 Matrix, Toyota Matrix, 2003 to 2009 Pontiac Vibe, which this is, or the Toyota Corolla. Basically almost is all the same. Toyota Corollas couldn't even go higher, basically all the same. First thing you're going to do is take the wheel off. Okay, it's a 21 millimeter lugs. Take the lugs, take the wheel off. Then what you're going to do is take the caliper off. And in the back over here, you got a 14 millimeter bolt. One here, I loosened it already, and one here. You take them off, 14 millimeter. All right, and now you can get a screwdriver in here or just pry it off. Oh, this car still has the alarm on. And just hang this up here. Don't let it hang on the rubber over here. It's just not a good idea to stretch it out. All right, now in the back over here, to get the bracket off, these are 17 millimeter, one here and one here. All right, you break those loose. The pads are right here. You just take them off. Okay, both sides. You're not going to use, obviously, doesn't matter if you take them off like that. And what I'll do is I'll get those loose. These are also the trim, the hardware where the pads slide on. You get new ones with your new brakes. All right, we get rid of these. Both sides. Now, before you take the bracket off, if the rotor is not loose, see this one is loose. I gotta disconnect that. What you really don't want to do, if this rotor is stuck on the hub, you don't really want to hit it with a hammer too hard. You could tap it a little bit, but you don't want to keep blasting it, because what you're going to do, you're going to mar up the ring, the bearing race, inside the hub bearing, and you're going to create more problems. You're going to get a hum. You're going to have to replace the hub bearing, which is a lot more involved than just replacing the brake rotor. Okay, they have right over here, this is probably a 6 millimeter thread. What you do is you find a bolt, like a valve cover bolt or any kind of a 10 millimeter head bolt. You're going to have the shaft as a 6 millimeter. You screw it in here, and it just breaks it loose. You get two bolts. You put one here, and you put one here because it has threads. You screw them in, then you do it with a ratchet, and you'll see how it'll pop right off, and that's the proper way to do that. Okay, just took off the bracket. It comes off, and these were, when you're hitting the brakes, they were pumping, they were shaking the steering wheel, so that's how you know that they're bad. You never want to resurface these. Back in the day, they used to resurface them. Now they're cheap enough to replace them, because think about it. If it warped when it was thick and you resurface it and make it thinner, it's going to warp even faster. It's just not a good practice. Okay, another thing you want to do is make sure the surface of the hub bearing is nice and clean. It doesn't have any thick rust spots, because the rotor will go on and be cocked crooked. That wouldn't be a good idea. All right, you make sure scrape it off. See and make sure everything's nice and smooth where the rotor is going to sit, because the rotor runs true. You want everything to run true so you'll have no pulsation in the brakes. Over here, you can clean this up with a wire brush and then grease it. Put a little grease on it, thin layer of grease. Okay, and now another thing. The slide pins over here, like when you hit the brakes, the caliper floats, it slides. So these are important. Matter of fact, okay, this one is not so bad, but these gotta go in and out. All right, and good thing to do is take the boot off. Actually, you can just take the boot off. The whole thing just slides right out. This one, okay, what you can do, take the boot off on the top. Right here on the top, not on the bottom, and you just slide these out. And what you can do is clean them up and re-lube them with grease. Sometimes there'll be a little bit of rust on here. You want to clean them up really nice. Then lube them up with grease, like I said. You put them back and just make sure that the boot covers the pin. It's important because the brakes can drag. The brakes, when you hit, let's say if this is frozen, when you hit the brakes, you won't get all the power. The car may pull to one side. So these are important. Okay, we're going to lube them up, and then we're going to, another thing before we do that, the rotor itself, you want to spray it on both sides of the pad surface with a brake cleaner. Clean off the residue of oil because they put a protective coating on there so they don't rust in the factory. So you just got to clean that off on both sides. Okay? So what I'm going to do right now is just going to wire brush this off a little bit, put a little bit of grease, put the rotor on, and then continue. Okay, see? Just a little thin grease, and you put... Okay, make sure it's nice and flush, and make sure it doesn't wobble, because like I said, in back of here where the bearing is, the hub, I'm sorry, it could be a little piece of rust, and it'll keep the rotor a little cocked. A lot of times people don't realize that. Put brand new brakes and they still pulsate. They don't pulsate as bad, but they still pulsate, and they think it's the rotor that they just got is a little warped, and it's not. Okay? All right. So after that, now what we're going to do, what I showed you before, I'm going to take them out and lube the pins, slide pins over here, and we're going to put this back. Okay, now before we install the bracket, I want to put the new hardware on. This goes like this. And this side goes in there. Just make sure it's nice and tight. I can't do it with one hand, but I'll show you. Once I install it, you do both of them, and then you install the bracket. Make sure you tighten those 17 millimeters nice and tight in the back. Okay, this is how it is. This is how it goes. They go on top of the, there's a little indent here. They lay right on top of that. Sometimes they have a little, you see that little tab in the back? Just make sure it's all the way down. So when you put the brakes on, they just slide, they slide on. They're gonna go on tight. Let me show you where the, okay, here's the new ones. So when you put them on, just make sure they're clean. Okay. You see how it goes in there? And this is gonna go in here. And sometimes it may, see in the bottom, it's in there. It may not go on the top. Just get like a little screwdriver. And what you do, if you can't get it on, you put the little screwdriver in there. Let me show you. Just put it in here, just like this. Sometimes you don't have to do this, but you know, it may help. And then you just push it in. It'll go in. There we go. And the same thing with the other side. It's good sometimes to turn the wheel out. Mine's on a lift right now, so I don't want to just turn it out so you can do the same thing on the other side if it's tight. But that's how they got to be, so they don't jiggle in there and make noise. Okay? I'm just going to do the other side, and we'll continue. Now we're going to have to push the piston back in. You're going to use a C-clamp. Because if you put this on now, the pads are thicker, the newer pads, it won't slide on. So you have to push the piston all the way back into the bore. And before you do that, you come up to the top of the vehicle. Make sure that the, see this one is pretty high already, but as you push it, the fluid's gonna go up. So you just take the cap off, okay? Put it on the side, make sure nothing goes in there, and use the C-clamp and push the piston back in and make sure that the brake fluid doesn't overflow, that's all. That's what I'm gonna do now. Okay, what I like to do is use the old brake pad, okay, in the center. And on the center, on the top, don't put pressure on the line. And we just screw it in. Go slow, because you're gonna feel resistance. Just go. And like I said, you don't want the brake fluid to come out because that's corrosive. It goes on anything. It can cause problems. Just clean it up fast, that's all. Okay, and once you're all the way out, take this off. Now, let me show you. Okay, see how it's nice and in? Nice and flat. And that's the way you want. Another thing too, when you're doing the brake job, you got to make sure you don't see no oil here. You see oil here, you're going to have to replace the caliper. Okay? It's a good idea to just check everything, you know, make sure everything looks okay. No leaks or nothing. And now it's just a matter of just turning this around and putting it right here. Okay? And there's little, oh, this car. And there's little square indents. Obviously it's flat, and over here it has to go up against it. So when you're turning it, this doesn't turn. When you're putting the screw in the bolt, it doesn't turn. It hits it up against there. Okay, I'm gonna do that and show you. You see this little flat area right here? And see, as you turn it, it's gonna hit it. So you wanna make sure it's like that, nice and tight. So when you put the bolt in, okay, everything is tight. It's important because it could be, you can not notice that and you put it on crooked. The same thing with the bottom. You see? It has to be nice and tight up against it. And you just tighten these two down. Okay, now after you tighten those two bolts for the caliper, you're going to go in the car, okay, and pump the brakes. Now, they're going to go right down to the floor. You're going to get scared. Don't worry about it. You keep pumping it because the fluid has to come back because you push the pistons in. The pistons have to come back out. All right, you pump it really good. You pump it with the car off. You pump it like 5 times, and then you're going to see your pedal's going to get rock hard. Then you come back out, and then you look at your level here. This is important. All right, see, the maximum level for this car is right here. Now, we have to suck some of this out with a siphon, because if you leave it the way it is, all right, there's usually sensors in here. There is sensors. There's sensors all over these things. Now, if you leave it that high, okay, now when your brakes wear down, they can wear down so low. Now the car's not going to tell you because it thinks that it's full because you didn't put it back where it belongs. You know what I'm talking about? Okay, if it's at the maximum is here, as your brakes wear, the brake fluid is going to go down, and the level of the sensor is going to put a light on, and they're saying you need brakes, or you know, it'll just have a brake light or tell you your brake pads are low. But now, if you keep it like this and you don't take this fluid out, the time it gets from here to the maximum, all right, your brakes can be worn out, and the light's not going to go on because it thinks it's full. Okay, that's important. And a lot of times you go to these fast lube places, then you never top off the brake fluid ever. Okay, now the front brakes are done. Okay, and what you do is you take it out until it's at the maximum. Especially this applies when you're doing all 4 brakes. Okay, so if you don't do the back brakes, you can leave it a little bit lower than the maximum. Like the maximum, let me show you so you can get an idea if you can see it. Come on. Anyhow, it's hard to see it. The maximum line is right here, right there. Okay, you can put it a little bit lower if you don't do the back brakes because they're a little bit worn. All right, if you do the back brakes too, you keep it up to the maximum fold with what I said, once you pump the brakes. Okay, that's how you do it, and that's how you keep your brake system working properly, and the warning lights will come on when they're supposed to. Okay, a lot of people skip that part. You don't do that. You don't fill that up. It's not a radiator. Okay, and after that, I'm gonna take the fluid out right now. See, now we got it at the proper level. It's right here where the line is. And like I said, I use this. You know, believe it or not, this is a turkey baster. Anyhow, I use it. It works. My automotive one broke. But anyway, and you just take a little bit of the fluid out to give you the proper level. Okay? And then after that, you test drive the car around the block. Make sure you don't hear no funny noises. And another thing too, make sure when you put, the rotor is nice and flush, that the guard here, the dust shield, is not rubbing on the rotor and giving you a screeching sound. Okay, you may have bent it or it's bent a little bit, and that's it. You test drive it, and you're good to go. You saved yourself a couple of $100, and you did it yourself right. That's what I'm about, bro. All right, guys and girls, So see you in the next video. Please subscribe, hit the like button. If you learned something, I would appreciate supporting the channel. Super thanks. Any questions, leave them below. I try to answer all my questions pertaining to the video. Just look at my comments. You see people thanking me from all over the world. I really appreciate it. That's what keeps me going. All right, guys. See you in the next video. Thank you for watching.